Okay, today's project is going to be a little bit different. I want to take part in a challenge, I guess you'd call it, to build or make or modify your own equipment. And I gave this a lot of thought. I've known about doing this for a few days now, 4 or 5 days. And the thing that made it kind of important to me is, and I've got nothing wrong with, or nothing against some of the people, any of the people who are putting out the videos on gear and so on. It's a good way to know how a piece of gear might be used or react after seeing somebody take it out and actually use it. But a lot of that stuff's expensive. And you know, I know there's a lot of young people out there, and certainly even older people, people who are just getting started in this, who are wanting to get started in this, and they just don't have the budget to go out and spend hundreds, if not even thousands of dollars getting themselves equipped with fancy saws and axes and $300, $400 backpacks and all the other gear, $200 sleeping bags and things. Those things are very cool, but they're very expensive. So I think the reason I really wanted to accept this was that I wanted to show that that's not necessary, that you can have these things and have the enjoyment and the pleasure of making them. Everybody has different abilities, different availability of equipment to use, but there's always something you can do. And I'm going to include in this video a few pictures of some of the other projects I've done, just as a kind of a collage of simple to more extreme projects that you can take on, that anybody should be able to take on, from, as I said, from very simple to some of the higher tech things that I like to do. So stay with me and we'll get going on this. So what I'm doing is stitching the belt to the flap on the top, and then the other piece will come from the bottom up. Okay, so today's plan is to weld up a little log lifter, kind of a cant hook with a handle type deal. Help save my back a little bit from the from bending over. I've been doing that all my life as a mechanic, lifting heavy things and working on big tractor trailer trucks, semi trucks and so on. And over the years, for 40 odd years, it's kind of worn my back out a little bit. So today's project is to make a way of lifting up the logs so I can lift them onto the splitter after they've been cut, and make my life a lot easier rather than having to just sort of lift them up, you know, trying to bend my knees and use my back. So that's the project. I've been doing this outside here because it gives me a little bit more room in order to be able to set the camera up and get, you know, a little bit more in angles. Not only that, but there's more light out here, so there's a buddy of mine in his big truck going by. So what we're going to do here is tack this in place with the MIG welder. Now you don't have to use a MIG welder. I suppose you could bolt it together, but that probably wouldn't be as strong, no doubt. But an arc welder, MIG welder, TIG welder, whatever you've got, it all works. I'm all fogged up in here. Right. One thing I will say about it, the MIG welder and that, there's very, very little slag. Gives you a nice clean weld. Alright, I think I'm going to flip it over and tack the other side. I'm doing this in shorter segments. You're not really getting the full effect of the whole build here, but the problem is it's pretty cold out here, and it's killing the camera battery pretty fast. So I've actually got it sitting in the sheltered area in my shop here, looking out the door with my toque over it when it's not running. So we'll see how it goes, but I'll bring this in and give you as much detail as I can. Okay, I'm going to grind this up a little bit just to make it nice and smooth. I'm going to try and get it painted up nice and make it look like something worthwhile before I show it on this, before this film is edited and put out. But I don't have heat in my shop at the moment, and it's too cold to paint outside, so I'm going to have to work on how I'm going to do that. Can't do it in the house because of the smell. So anyways, we'll just work on cleaning this up a little bit. Okay, so this is how this is going to work. This is how it's supposed to work. So, this will be the handle up at this end, which I'll hold like this. This is a piece of an old cant hook I picked up at a yard sale, I don't know, a couple of years ago. This is a project I wanted to do for a couple of years, ever since I got this, but it's one of those things that somehow always gets put on the back burner. So this, I'm going to have to drill a hole through here, or weld on a bracket, whichever. And this will hang in here, something like this. If you can see here better, this will be bolted through either on a piece of metal or right through the bars, and it will hang down like this. And when I want to pick up a piece of wood, it opens up this point here, hooks on the one side of the wood, this sharp edge here, kind of a chisel point edge, will hook the other side of the wood, and you just pick it up. That way I can do it this way. We're going to get back a little bit. I can just hook it this way, because that will be, as I said, down in there like that, attached. I can just grab the log, pick it up, put it on the splitter. That's the hardest part. Some of the logs are, you know, a foot or 14 or 16 inches in diameter, and when you've got to bend over and pick those up to set them on the splitter, and you do that for several hours, that's hard on anybody, but I'm not getting any younger, so I need to get something like this. I'll probably put something nicer on the handle. Now I welded this handle on. I welded a fairly large handle on because I'm probably going to be wearing heavy gloves. Summer or winter I'm going to be wearing gloves, so I wanted a good rigid grip on this handle to do this, but this is going to work, I think, pretty good. And then I'm going to decide if I'm going to drill a hole through here or put a plate through there and drill a hole through that. That would probably be stronger. Anyway, I'll let you know. Okay, I've decided that instead of trying to drill a hole through here, the size of the hole in this cant hook is fairly large. As you can see there, it's almost as big in diameter as these pieces of bar I used. So if I try to drill a hole through here, there's not going to be enough left for any strength and support. So I'm going to make this plate up here. This is just a piece of sacrifice steel, so I don't cut into my, or weld into my aluminum and burn it. And I've cut these two little pieces, this piece here, and that piece there. I'm going to weld those together, and then the cant hook will be bolted to this one, and this small piece will be welded across between those two bars. So that's where we're going right now. I'm going to get it as centered up and squared up as I can here. I want to make it's got to be squared up. It doesn't necessarily have to be centered up, but it really needs to be squared up nice. So I'm just going to tack that. Okay, now that's not that square. It's close, but it's not actually square, so I'm gonna, oops, that didn't tack too well. That's better. Okay, it's not bad, not bad. I'm going to slow the feed on that wire down just a bit. It's chirping a bit on me. Things are cold and things are hot, and all the way around it's awkward to work on. Okay, let's tack that back piece in place. That's better. We'll do it from the other side, because too much heat concentrated on just one side alone will cause that to peel over on an angle, which we don't want. So we'll do this on this side now. I think we're going to give that a minute before I have to hold on to it. Okay, I made the piece that sticks through long enough that I can weld this to the back side so I don't lose any clearance, and it's never going to pull through this. So I've switched from the cutting wheel and the grinding wheel to a pretty worn out old sanding wheel. And I've picked this wheel because I don't really want to hog off a lot of material. I just want to buff off the edges of the welds, clean off some of the scale on here or whatever there is, and just clean it up, because at some point here I'm going to paint it, so I might as well do it now. I don't know how well you can see this, but there's quite a bit of, not heavy rust, but just discoloration here. And then here, I don't know if that light is glistening off there, but you can see I haven't done a real careful job, but you can see where it's cleaning it up pretty nice. And here. And what I'm doing now is just sort of the first roughness. That way I can get a good clean look at the welds that I've got, make sure that nothing needs to be altered, redone, fixed, whatever. Now's the time to do it. Okay, so as I was saying, I cleaned up just a kind of a rough job on this, and I did the whole thing around where all the welds are. I did actually touch up a weld or two here that weren't, well, they were good, but just because I do it. Then what I did is I used that same worn out wheel, and this old cant hook is, I can't even imagine how old it is. I got this from an old fellow who had it in the back shed of his garage shop. And it had been laying there for, this guy was like 80 years old, and it was there as long as he could remember. So I just did the same thing and cleaned it all up. So let's put it together and see what it looks like. Okay, so you want this to face like this. So I just grabbed an old bolt. I don't think this is probably the one I'm going to use, but it'll do. Turn this sideways so you can see. The bolt goes through the hook. Now I have a washer here I'll put on, yeah, this bolt's way too long, and a lock nut, which I'm just going to put on just a tiny bit here, just to show us. So that's how it looks. Once I get a proper bolt on there, it won't be so floppy, of course, and that's how it's going to work. I don't know if it'll work as floppy as this, but let's get a piece of wood and give it a try. Okay, this is really sloppy because that bolt needs to be about an inch long, or maybe even 3/4, and it's actually probably 2.5 inches long, so I'm not really confident in this working, but let's give it a go. So you basically just drop it like this and make it, oh, there we go, see? So that's it. So all I really need to do now, I'll get a proper bolt for there. I think I could get one even slightly bigger in diameter, but I'll get a short bolt in there and a couple of washers, and I'll put that together. So if you want to put these things up on a log splitter, you can just lift it up without having to be bent over all the time. Okay, so here we go. This is the finished product. except as I said, this, you can see here that this bolt is, set that up there, is far too long, and it causes this to wobble way too much to the side. That should be not rigid. You need it to be loose enough to move freely, but it shouldn't wobble like that. But despite that, we saw that it works. So once I fix this up, get a better pivot in here, that should work great. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Okay, well here we are. Finished product. I managed to get a bit of paint on it. And two excellent colors, mostly because that's what I had. I decided for this situation I'd go, or for this challenge or whatever, I'd go all out and make it two-tone. Plus out in the snow here it's easier to see. Let's give it a whirl. Just like that. And then you can just set it up on your splitter and it works great. Okay, so that's my finished project for this trip. I made that particular item because that's something that I needed and wanted to make anyways. Now this is part of a challenge, as he calls it. Let me get the paper here. A challenge by Jeff Coach Allen, Off the Gridiron is his channel. I'll put a link to that. And he calls it the BushCraft Build Off Challenge. And I think, from the way I understand it, what it means to me anyway, is that we should probably make a bigger effort to manufacture or modify or somehow contribute to the function of our own gear. It's just a fun thing to do. It sharpens our skills, and no matter how big or how small, there's no reason not to get out there and do it. So his idea is to upgrade, create, or modify a piece of your own gear. That could be anything from carving a spoon, a cooksa, something like that. Could be a bigger project like this if you've got welders and so on to work with. You could modify a knife in some way, change the handle, make a new handle yourself. Anything that you can do to your gear. Just something to show that you know, you're taking part in supplying some of your gear, and it cuts the cost down. If we can make it, we don't have to pay for it. So he also wanted to tag 2 or 3 other people, each person who accepts this. So I'm going to do that now. And my tags are Swamp Valley, Sky. I always wanted to see more of what you've got going on. You're a pretty handy guy, so I'm looking forward to seeing what you've got. Also, Girl Outdoors, and you should check out these channels, guys. This young lady has got some skills. You know, she's really good at what she does. Very mature she's quite young. She's very mature for her age. And, you know, she knows what she's doing out there, so I'm really sort of anxious to see what she's got going on. And finally, I'm looking at 13 Prevail. That's a channel I've been watching more recently. Very personable guy, nice guy. He's also another Canadian, as I am myself, and he's got some pretty good skills himself. He's been living in a bush-type environment, the same as I do, so his skills come naturally. You know, he's out there doing it pretty daily, and I'm really curious to see what he comes up with on something like this. So you 3 people, Swamp Valley, Girl Outdoors, and 13 Prevail. I'm looking forward to, hopefully you'll accept the challenge, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. So I want to thank you for watching, and it's been a lot of fun. And if you haven't subscribed, I would appreciate it if you do. Like and share if you know anybody who's interested in seeing something like this. Don't forget, if you subscribe, to hit the little bell so that you'll get notified when the videos do come out. And everybody have a good week, and we'll see y'all the next time.